Hello students, in this lecture we will discuss about the study of ecosystem. In that we will discuss about the pond ecosystem, then we will discuss about the river ecosystem, and then we will discuss about the daily ridges. Now here you can see the image of pond ecosystem. What is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is a dynamic complex of plant, animal, and microorganisms, communities, and the non-living environment interacting as a functional unit. The organisms living in an ecosystem are broken down into categories, that is, producers, consumers, and decomposers. Now, how to define an ecosystem? The pond ecosystem is a freshwater ecosystem that can either be temporary or permanent and consist of a wide variety of aquatic plants and animals interacting with each other and the surrounding aquatic conditions. The pond ecosystem falls under the category of lentic ecosystem because the water remains stagnant for a longer period. What is pond? Pond is a quiet body of water that is too small for wave action and too shallow for major temperature differences from top to bottom. It is usually has a muddy or silty bottom with aquatic plants around and edges and throughout. However, it is often difficult to classify the differences between a pond and a lake. Since the two terms are artificial and the ecosystem refers on a continuum basis. Generally, in a pond, the temperature changes with the air temperature and is relatively uniform. Lakes are similar to ponds, but because they are larger, temperature layering or stratification takes place in summer and winter, and these layers turn over in the spring and fall. Ponds get their energy from the sun. As with other ecosystems, plants are the primary producers in pond ecosystem. The chlorophyll in aquatic plants capture energy from the sun to convert carbon dioxide and water to organic compounds and oxygen through the process of photosynthesis. Nitrogen and phosphorus are important nutrients for plants. The addition of these substances may increase primary productivity. However, too many nutrients can cause algal blooms, leading to the process of eutrophication. Now, how many types of pond ecosystems are there? In that, the first is the garden pond ecosystem. The garden pond ecosystem are man-made artificial pond ecosystems that comprise ornamental plants and animal species exported from all over the world. Salt pond ecosystem. These ecosystems are naturally formed at the seaside and contain brackish water. These are formed due to waterlogging. These can also be found in rocky area on the beach called rock pools. Since it contains brackish water, it can accommodate sea plants and animals. Freshwater pond ecosystems. The ecosystems are naturally formed due to rainfall or soil water saturation due to continuous rain. Moreover, they can also be formed due to the flow of river water into a large and deep depression. These ecosystems serve as a home to fresh fishes, amphibians, crustaceans, and many other kinds of wildlife. Vernal pond ecosystem. These vernal pond ecosystems are seasonal ponds that are temporarily formed during the heaviest rainfall due to accumulation of water in the depression in the ground. With the change in the season, they often turn into desert land. Mountain pond ecosystem. Naturally formed ponds are found in the mountain regions. These are formed due to the shifting of rocks and snow melting. They accommodate rare or endangered aquatic species. Characteristics of pond ecosystem. The following are the main characteristics of pond ecosystems. The water in the pond ecosystem is stagnant, either natural or artificial. Boundaries surround the pond ecosystem. The pond ecosystem exhibits three distinct zones: the littoral zone, limnatic zone, profundal zone, and benthic zone. The biotic components of the pond ecosystem occupy different levels in the pond ecosystem. Therefore, avoiding the competition for survival. Scavengers and decomposers occupy the bottom level, and fish occupy the middle level. The plants enclose the pond's boundaries and provide shelter to small animals and insects. Pond ecosystems show a wide range of variety in their size. Stratification in the pond ecosystem. Different factors such as distance from the shore, penetration of light, depth of water, plant and animal species, etc., determine the following zone found in the pond ecosystem. Littoral zone, it is the zone closer to the shore. It contains shallow water and allow easy penetration of light. Rooted plant species occupy it. Animal species including reeds, crawfish, snails, insects, etc. Limnatic zone, The limnatic zone refers to the open water of the pond with an effective penetration of light. The zone is dominated by phytoplankton, animal species mainly including small fishes and insects. Profundal zone, the region of a pond below the limnatic zone, is called a profound zone with no effective penetration of light. Or might be if there is a penetration, even though it is in a very less quantity. Some amphibians and small turtles occupy it. Benthic zone. The bottom zone of a pond is benthic and is occupied by a community of decomposers. The decomposers are called benthos. Abiotic components of an ecosystem. Abiotic components are the components which are non-living factors. Abiotic components are non-living components of an ecosystem that matters for aquatic species survival. Following are the abiotic factors of an ecosystem. Light. Light serves as main abiotic component required for the photosynthetic activity of the phytoplankton. The littoral zone has the maximum light penetration, whereas the profound zone has the least light penetration. Temperature. As the depth of the pond increases, the temperature of the water gradually decreases. Due to the gradual decrease in the light penetration, dissolve oxygen, light penetration. Next, abiotic component of an ecosystem is dissolved oxygen. The amount of dissolved oxygen is maximum in the shallow water and gradually decreases while moving from the surface to the depth of the pond. Now, biotic components of the ecosystem. Whatever the biocomponents, they are the living components. They play an important role in maintaining those particular ecosystems. In that, the first are producers. The producers of biotic components include species of rooted, submerged, immersed, floating plants, and algae. The most common filamentous algae found in the pond is Spirogyra, Mogiotia, and Xynema are some other algae found in the pond. Particularly, this Spirogyra is a freshwater alga, and typically the character is based on its habitat that it is found in the stagnant water. Azola, Hydrilla, Pistia, Wolfia, Lima, Ecornia, Nymphia, Potomogeton, and Gysia, etc. are few examples of green plants that are found in the pond ecosystem. Primary consumers. A large population of zooplanktons are the main primary consumers. Besides these, the small herbivores such as snail, insect, fish, tadpoles, and larvae are aquatic animals. And these aquatic animals are the primary consumers often found in the pond. Secondary consumers. These include large animal species such as frogs, big fishes, water snakes, crabs, etc. The consumers of the highest order might include mammals like water shrews, water voles, herons, ducks, kingfishers, etc. Decomposers. These include different types of bacteria and fungi that feed upon dead and decaying parts of the aquatic species. Food chain in the ecosystem. Now, we have studied different types of food chain, and we know that the food chain varies from ecosystem. The food chain is a sequence of organisms in which each organism eats the lower member and is being eaten up by the next higher member. Phytoplankton and large algae serve as producers that convert solar energy into chemical energy. Phytoplankton is being consumed by zooplankton, that is primary consumers. The food chain further proceeds with the small pond species that feed on zooplankton. Small pond species are eaten by large pond species. A number of bacteria and fungi feed on dead and decaying part of the animal species and are therefore called decomposers. Decomposers convert the organic matter, that is, dead plants and animals, into their inorganic components that are again utilized by producers, and hence a continuous flow of energy is maintained. Now, importance of pond ecosystem in the environment. Some aquatic plants help to improve the water quality by absorbing pollutants and heavy metals. The shoreline plants absorb nitrogen and phosphorus and therefore prevent the algal bloom and maintain the oxygen level in the pond. Moreover, aquatic plants absorb animal waste to reduce the nutrient availability for plants and therefore prevent the growth of algae. The pond ecosystem is one of the sites for conservation of biodiversity as different types of plants and consumers occupy different strata in the pond and live together by interacting with each other. Ponds in mountain regions conserve the endangered species. The pond ecosystem also serves as a source of water for the species that do not live in the pond. Pond ecosystem contribute to the beauty of nature as they accommodate a variety of ornamental flowering plants. Stratification in the pond ecosystem determines the distribution of animal species in the pond. It reduces the competition among the species to some extent. Pond ecosystem producers that include first, that is a phytoplankton. Phytoplankton, literally wandering plants, are microscopic algae that float in an open water and give it a green appearance. They carry out photosynthesis using carbon monoxide that is dissolved in the water and release oxygen that is used by bacteria and animals in the pond. Phytoplankton are not actually plants, they are protists. Periphytic algae. Periphytic algae are microscopic algae that attach themselves to substrate and give the rocks and sticks a greenish brown, slimy appearance. They also carry out photosynthesis and produce oxygen, often near the bottom of the pond where it can be used by decomposers. Now, submerged plants. Submerged plants grow completely underwater. Floating plants. Floating plants include plants that floats on the surface and plants that are rooted on the bottom of the pond but have leaves and stems that float. Emergent plants. Emergent plants are rooted in shallow water but their stems and leaves are above water most of the time. Shore plants. Shore plants grow in wet soil at the edge of the pond. Now, after producers, there is the next level of the consumers. Now, what are the consumers? Zooplanktons. Zooplanktons are microscopic animals that eat phytoplankton or smaller zooplankton. Some are single-celled animals, tiny crustaceans, or tiny, immature stages of larger animals. Zooplankton float about in the open water portions of the pond and are important food for some animals. Invertebrates. Invertebrates include all animals without backbones. Microinvertebrates. Microinvertebrates are big enough to be seen with the naked eye. Some of them are only found in clean water. Vertebrates. Vertebrates are animals with backbones in a pond. These might include fish, frog, salamanders, and turtles. Decomposers. Now, after consumers, the next level is the decomposers. Animals, waste, and dead and decaying plants and animals form detritus on the bottom of the pond. Decomposers, also known as detritivores, are bacteria and other organisms that break down detritus into material that can be used by primary producers, thus returning the detritus to the ecosystem. As the material decomposes, it can serve as a food resource for microbes and invertebrates. During decay, microbes living on detritus can pull nutrients from the overlying water, thus acting to improve water quality. In the process of breaking down detritus, decomposers produce water and carbon dioxide. A pond ecosystem is a community of organisms that live in a pond. It is a freshwater ecosystem in which the various organisms rely on one another. The biotic factors of the pond ecosystem are classified into three categories. They are known as producers, consumers, and decomposers. Algae and hydrophytic plants are the two types of producers. Consumers are classified as primary, secondary, and tertiary. Protozoa and crustacea are the primary consumers. Larvae, snakes, frogs, and amphibians, reptiles, and other animals are secondary consumers. Fishes, sharks, and other tertiary consumers are examples. Hydrophytic bacteria, fungi, and microbes are the three types of decomposers. Abiotic factors. Non-living things that help the pond ecosystem survive to include humus, oxygen in the water, light, heat, and minerals. Now, in all, that's just about an ecosystem. An ecosystem is a functional unit of the biosphere. The biotic and abiotic components of any unit of the biosphere interact with each other. They influence each other and together constitute a dynamic system called an ecosystem. It can be categorized as self-regulating and self-sustaining unit of landscape. The pond ecosystem is an aquatic ecosystem that comprises several submerged, immersed, free-floating plants and algae living together with different types of animal species. The pond is an example of an ecosystem involving aquatic animals and plants interacting with each other in an environment. Stratification is one of the characteristic features of the pond ecosystem that determines the availability of essential abiotic factors such as light, oxygen, minerals, etc. to the different levels of depth in the pond. The availability of abiotic factors also determines the distribution of consumers and decomposers. According to their need for different abiotic factors. The article is a sum up of different features and components of the pond ecosystem. Now, after the pond ecosystem, we will discuss about the river ecosystem. Now, you might be have a clear concept the difference in between the pond and the river. In river, it is not the stagnant water; it's a flowing water, or the water in the river ecosystem is in a continuous flow. So, the plant with a habitat of flowing water, they are mainly found in the river ecosystem. Comparatively, in pond ecosystem, the water is stagnant. So, the river ecosystem are flowing waters that drain the landscape and include the biotic living interactions among its plants, animals, and microorganisms as well as abiotic, non-living, physical, and chemical interactions of its many parts. River ecosystems are part of larger watershed networks or catchments where smaller headwater streams drain into mid-sized streams, which progressively drain into large river networks. The major zone in river ecosystem are determined by the river bed's gradient or by the velocity of the current. Faster moving, turbulent water typically contains greater concentrations of dissolved oxygen, which supports greater biodiversity than the slow moving water of pools. These distinctions form the basis for the division of rivers into upland and downland rivers. The food base of streams within riparian forest is mostly derived from the trees, but wider streams and those that lack a canopy derive the majority of their food base from algae. Anadromous fish are also an important source of nutrients. Environmental threats to rivers include loss of water, dams, chemical pollution, and introduction and introduced species. A dam produces negative effects that continue down the watershed. The most important negative effects are the reduction of spring flooding, which damage wetlands, and the retention of sediment, which leads to the loss of deltaic wetlands. Here you can see the image of river ecosystem. The food base of a stream within riparian forest is mostly derived from the trees but wider streams. and those that lack a canopy derive the majority of their food base from algae. Anadromous fish are also an important source of nutrients. Environmental threats to rivers include loss of water, dams, chemical pollutions, and introduced species. A dam produce negative effect that continue down the watershed. The most important negative effects are the reduction of spring flooding, which damages wetland and the retention of sediment, which leads to the loss of deltaic wetland. River ecosystems are prime examples of lotic ecosystem. Lotic refers to floating water from the Latin lotus, meaning washed. Lotic waters range from spring only a few centimeters wide to major rivers kilometers in width. Much of this articles applies to lotic ecosystem in general, including related lotic system, which such as streams and spring. Lotic ecosystem can be contrasted with lentic ecosystem, which involve relatively still terrestrial water such as lakes, ponds, and wetlands. Together, these two ecosystems form the more general, steady area of freshwater or aquatic ecology. The following unifying character make the ecology of running water unique among aquatic habitats. The flow is unidirectional. There is a state of continuous physical change and there is a high degree of spatial and temporal heterogeneity. At all scales, microhabitats, the variability between lotic system is quite high, and the biota is specialized to live with flow conditions. The ecology of river refers to the relationship that living organisms have with each other and with their environment. The ecosystem, an ecosystem is the sum of interaction between plants, animals, and microorganisms, and between them, and non-living physical and chemical components in a particular natural environment. River ecosystems have flowing water that is mostly unidirectional, a state of continuous physical change. Many different and changing microhabitats, variability in the flow rates of water, plants and animals that have adapted to live within water flow conditions. Water flow. Water flow is the main factor that makes a river ecology different from other water ecosystem. This is known as lotic or flowing water system. The strength of water flow varies from torrential rapids to slow backwaters. The speed of water also varies and is subject to chaotic turbulence. Flow can be affected by sudden water input from snowmelt, rain, and groundwater. Water flow can alter the shape of riverbeds through erosion and sedimentation, creating a variety of changing habitats. Substrate. The substrate is a surface on which the river organisms live. It may be inorganic, inorganic, consisting of geological material from the catchment areas such as boulders, pebbles, and gravels, sand or silt, or it may be organic, which include fine particles, leaves, wood, moss, and plants. Substrate is generally not permanent and is subject to large changes during flooding events. Light. Light provides energy for photosynthesis, which produces the primary food source for the river. It also provides refuges for prey species in the shadow it casts. The amount of light received in a flowing waterway is variable. For example, depending on whether it is a stream within a forest shaded by overhanging trees or a wide exposed river where the sun has open access to its surface. Deep rivers tend to be more turbulent and particles in the water increasingly weaken light penetration as depth increases. Temperature. Water temperature in rivers varies with the environment. Water can be heated or cooled through radiation at the surface and conduction to or from the air and surrounding substrate. Temperature differences can be significant between the surface and the bottom of deep, slow moving rivers. Climate, shading, and elevation all affects water temperature. Species living in these environments are called poikilotherms. Their internal temperature varies to suit their environmental conditions. Water chemistry. The chemistry of water varies from one river ecosystem to another. It is often determined by inputs from the surrounding environment or catchment area, but can also be influenced by rain and the addition of pollution from human sources. Oxygen is the most important chemical constituent of river system. Most organisms need it for survival. It enters the water mostly at the surface, but its solubility decreases as the water temperature increases. Fast turbulent water exposes a wider water surface to the air and tend to have lower temperatures, achieving more oxygen input than slow backwater. Oxygen is limited if water circulation is poor, animal activity is high, or if there is a large amount of organic decay in the waterway. Bacteria. Bacteria are present in large numbers in river waters. They play a significant role in energy recycling. Bacteria decompose organic material into inorganic compounds that can be used by plants and by other microbes. Plants. Plant photosynthesis, converting light energy from the sun into chemical energy that can be used to fuel organisms' activities. Underwater plants. A variety of plants can be found growing within a river system. Some plants are free floating while others are rooted in areas of reduced current. Algae are most significant source of primary food in most rivers or streams. Most float freely and are therefore unable to maintain large populations in fast floating water. They build up large number in slow moving rivers or backwaters. Some algae species attach themselves to objects to avoid being washed away. Plants are more successful in slower currents. Some plants, such as mosses, attach themselves to solid objects. Some plants are free floating, such as duckweed or water hyacinth. Others are rooted in area of reduced current where sediment is stored. Water currents provide oxygen and nutrients for plants. Plants protect animals from the current and predators and provide a food source. Invertebrates have no backbone or spinal column and include crayfish, snails, limpets, clams, mussels found in river. A large number of invertebrates in river system are insects. They can be found in almost every available habitat on the water surface, on the under stones, or in below the substrate or adrift. In the current, some avoid high currents by living in the substrate area, while others have adapted by living on the sheltered downstream side of rocks. Invertebrates rely on the current to bring them food and oxygen. They are both consumers and prey in river systems. Fish. The availability of fish to live in a river system depends on their speed and duration of that speed. It takes enormous energy to swim against a current. This availability varies and is related to the area of habitat the fish may occupy in the river. Most fish tend to remain close to the bottom, the bank, or behind obstacles, swimming in the current only to feed or change location. Some species never go into the current. Most river systems are typically connected to other lotic systems, spring, wetland, waterways, streams, oceans, and many fish have life cycles that require stages in other systems. Eels, for example, move between freshwater and saltwater. Fish important consumers. Fish are important consumers and prey species. Birds. A bird number, a large number of birds also inhabit river ecosystem, but they are not tied to the water as fish are and spend some of their time in terrestrial habitats. Fish and water invertebrates are an important food source of water birds. Now, the last part of this lecture is Delhi ridges, an extension of the 1500 million years old Aravalli Range. Delhi Ridge is a dry deciduous forest land in the heart of Delhi. Its prominent role in protecting the capital city against the hot winds of the Rajasthan desert has earned the nickname Lungs of Delhi. Is spread over almost 8,000 hectares. The ridges is divided into 4 zones known as Northern Ridge, Southern Ridge, Central Ridge, and South Central Ridge. Its whole area houses various historical monuments, biodiversity park, and a wildlife sanctuary, a home to more than 100 avian species. The ridge is one of the best spots in the Delhi for bird watching. The Delhi Ridge is a prominent geological feature and biodiversity hotspot located in the National Capital Territory of Delhi, India. It is a part of larger Aravalli Range system, one of the oldest mountain range in the world, dating back millions of years. The Aravalli Range is spread across states like Delhi, Haryana, Rajasthan, and Gujarat. You can see a part of Delhi Range in this picture. The ever-growing and ever-changing Delhi, the country's capital city, can be a stifling place sometimes. Thankfully, the city has its green pocket because of which the city is livable to great extent. One such green pocket in the Delhi Ridge is also known as Delhi Aravalli Range. Delhi Aravalli Ridge. The Delhi Ridge is a prominent geological feature and biodiversity hotspot located in the National Capital Territory of Delhi, India. It is a part of larger Aravalli Range system, one of the oldest mountain range of the world. Dating back millions of years, the Aravalli Range is spread across the states like Delhi, Haryana, Rajasthan, and Gujarat. The Delhi chapter of the Aravalli Range comprises several protected forests, including the Northern Ridge, North Campus of the Delhi University, Southern Ridge, and the Tughalkabad Ridge. These three collectively form the Delhi Ridge. It is imperative to note that the Delhi Ridge serves as a crucial green lung for the city, and sometimes the city can't do without. Looking at Delhi, the megapolis that it is today, it is almost hard to imagine a place like this, with millions of people, as a place with a diverse range of flora and fauna, all thanks to the city's green pockets. Northern Ridge area near Vidhan Sabha in North Delhi is easily one of the most beautiful, lush and refreshing places in Delhi. The ridge area with a slightly elevated topography makes for a very pretty drive. No wonder many residents love to come out here on the weekends. A quick stroll inside the ridge can be quite refreshing, especially since the foliage is pretty denser, shaded, denser, shaded grounds, pretty walking trails. What more do we need for a nice day of picnic? It is a popular spot for hiking, nature walks, and environmental education programs. Due to its ecological importance, there have been numerous efforts to protect and conserve the Delhi Ridge. For this purpose, the Delhi Ridge was declared a reserve forest area. But unfortunately, despite many conservation efforts, the Delhi Ridge faces several challenges: urban encroachment, deforestation, and pollution, to name some. Somehow, we still lag behind when it comes to balancing urban development with nature conservation. May we not forget or overlook Delhi Ridge's role as a crucial geological, ecological, and historical feature in the National Capital Territory of in Delhi. Thank you.